Tanner Scott is struggling, and his struggles have exposed an even bigger flaw in the Dodgers bullpen.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Dodger fans, this is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks to our everydayers for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen, and thanks for being here live with us on Wednesday evening if you are. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers, so please subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now. If this is your first time with us, I am Jeff Snider. That guy next to me is Vince Samperio. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans, just like most of you. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room, so we bring you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. And the Dodgers lost to the Guardians, and a few different things came up. Tanner Scott obviously was the big story, blew the save, had a new worst game of the season for him, in some ways at least. That ruined a pretty good start from Clayton Kershaw that wasn't perfect, but had some issues. We're going to talk about Kershaw's start in the second segment, and is this who he is now, or is he still on his way back? And then contributing to Tanner Scott's blown save was some shaky defense that we're going to dig into in the last segment about what the Dodgers should prioritize defense in the late innings. But Tanner Scott was the big story, Vince. He came in, he got 1 out, 2 outs. I think 1 out. Yeah, just 1 out again. So the second time in the last
strikeout.
Second time in the last 3 games for him that he just got 1 out and allowed multiple runs. He
got
rough.
2 outs, but he finished an inning and then came back out, didn't he?
That's right. Yeah, he got the out in the 7th inning, 1 out in the 8th inning. And that out was Austin Hedges. So I'm not sure that it counts because it didn't come against a major league hitter. But it was rough. And this is now 3 of Tanner Scott's last 5 outings have been bad. Multiple runs in each of those, blown saves in 3 of his last 5 outings. And I had this thought, Vince, that everybody goes through slumps, especially relief pitchers. Relief pitchers are the most volatile of all baseball players. They all go through slumps. And a lot of times you don't even really notice. A guy will have a bad game, and then the team gives him a few days off. I remember, was it earlier this year or last year when it's like, oh, Blake Trinan hasn't pitched in a while. And they never said anything. It was just, we're just giving Blake Trinan some time. And then maybe you put a guy into a lower leverage situation a couple times, and hey, you know what? He's struggling. Just take on the 7, 8, 9 hitters in the 6th inning instead of a save situation, and get back in your groove that way. And that's how relief pitchers generally get out of their slumps. The problem right now for the Dodgers, and this is kind of the bigger problem that I hinted at, is right now you look at the Dodgers bullpen, and they have 2 reliable relief pitchers. That's Ben Casparis and Jack Dreyer, and they're both rookies, and both guys that they count on for long relief, multi-inning stints. And so they're not necessarily in a position to be a closer necessarily. It's a weird situation that they're in, that Tanner Scott has basically been forced to keep pitching these high leverage situations because, as bad as he's been, he's still probably a better option than Luis Garcia or Anthony Banda right now.
Yeah, first I want to say I don't think you can pin a loss on a broadcast duo, but it was Davis or I forget who was broadcasting. I watched most of the game on mute, but I did hear when Nolan Jones came into the game for Stephen Kwan, and every time they came to bat, we're like, well, you'd rather have Nolan Jones at the plate than Stephen Kwan, and then Nolan Jones got 3 hits, one of them being the hit in the 8th inning that kind of really broke the straw that broke the camel's back. So yeah, if they would have just not said anything, maybe, there's no jinxes, but you like to think about it sometimes that way. But yeah, on the Tanner Scott front, yes, it was unlucky. He did get a lot of swings and misses, but also this Guardians team is not very good offensively. And you can quibble with, okay, well, expected batting averages on some of those hits were bad and everything else. But if he would have just struck the guys out, some of this wouldn't happen. But regardless of all that, yeah, what you're saying is true. Like, we talked about this a couple weeks ago when a lot of the pitchers started going down, is that the Dodgers were going to have some question marks at starters and a 50-50 coin flip in the bullpen for the most part, other than Casparis. And we might have mentioned Tanner Scott at that point because he was doing really well. And then it's, now he's a little bit of a coin flip. So it's one of those things where there's nothing they can really do about it right now. That's the other bad part.
Yeah, and that's the frustrating part, and before we started, I saw a comment in the chat from Los Dodgers World Series champ saying, man, I miss Evan Phillips and Blake Trinan. And I replied and said, and Michael Kopech and Kirby Yates and Bruce Gratterall. Like, the Dodgers have an entire bullpen of good pitchers on the injured list right now. Tanner Scott will come out of this slump. I'm as sure of that as I can be. I still think he's a very good pitcher. Today it was one you might have to strike everybody out because the BABIP gods are against you today. An infield single and then a ground ball that looked like it might be a double play, and it turned into another infield single because it took a weird hop that ended up knocking Muncy down basically. And we're going to talk in the third segment about that play a little bit more, from a defensive standpoint. But then even the 2-run hit by Nolan Jones. Andy Pye had slipped and fell on the wet outfield grass, probably would have thrown out the second runner at home. Who knows how much different that inning is? If Pye throws him out at home, then it's, maybe Tanner Scott stays in instead of Alex Vesia coming in, and the Dodgers still have a lead at that point. Who knows? You could never know what would have happened, but that was bad luck. And the fact that this was Nolan Jones' first ground ball base hit to the opposite field of the season and 6th of his career. This is his 5th season in the big leagues.
The worst part of that, he looked like he tried to do it too. Like he was all of a sudden, I'll be a situational hitter right now for the first time ever.
6th time in 5 years that Nolan Jones has done that. And so I saw somebody saying, well, terrible positioning by the Dodgers. No, you look at his batted ball profile, you had a 98% chance of being right there, but 6 times, 962 plate appearances or something. And he's done that 6 times, but it happened to be right there. So yeah, there's definitely some bad luck involved. But that's how slumps go. Sometimes there is bad luck involved. And the answer is strike more guys out, because the fact is he had 2 strikes on Nolan Jones. Tanner Scott's a tough lefty, and he didn't locate that pitch very well. If he throws that slider 6 inches outside, he gets a swing and miss, and it's totally different. It wasn't a good pitch, even though the results showed bad luck.
Yeah, that's the part where, like I mentioned, strike more guys out, and you can look at his line and be like, well, he had 9 swings and misses and, not that many at-bats and everything else and, blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, like, yeah, you got the first 2 strikes, but getting that 3rd strike is where it's key, and you miss your spot and, a guy puts the ball in play, and that's what happens when the ball gets put in play. It probably evened itself out. Like Clayton Kershaw got really good luck, and then Tanner Scott got really bad luck. So maybe the score would have been 7-4 regardless. It just would have been on Kershaw's shoulders rather than the bullpen shoulders. But that's just the way it goes sometimes, and not to continue to jump on Tanner Scott. Obviously, he probably feels worse. I would imagine he feels worse than we do. But this is another part, because we're not going to talk about the offense in this episode, so I'll say it now. The offense got to put up more than 4 runs, especially against a guy that's not necessarily built up to be a starter. And then you're facing, a bunch of guys that some you've already faced this series. 4 runs. We asked for 5. It wouldn't have been enough in this. But, if you would have got 5, maybe 6 runs, maybe Tanner Scott doesn't pitch that inning. Maybe everything goes a little bit differently. And then you go home with a sweep.
Yeah. The Dodgers, the first 2 games of the series, had 16 base runners in each of those. This game, they had 9. It's, they got out hit by the Guardians. Even before the Guardians took the lead, they had been hitting better than the Dodgers. And, and as you mentioned, there was a little bit of good luck for Kershaw that we're going to dig into. Clayton Kershaw is definitely not 3-time Cy Young Award winner Clayton Kershaw right now. The question is this just who he is now, or is he still on his way back? It's probably somewhere in between. We'll dig into it, so please keep it locked on Dodgers. Are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with wonderful pistachios. I've been watching a lot of my son's baseball lately, and I love munching on some delicious, no-shell, honey-roasted pistachios from Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1-ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better-for-you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Maybe you prefer your pistachios in their shells. Well, they got you covered there too with their in-shell options. For me, I don't like to touch food with my hands, so I like the no shells so I can just pour a few straight into my mouth. Wonderful Pistachios is a complete protein, providing all 9 essential amino acids. These little green wonders pack a protein punch. So whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids, Wonderful Pistachios is the snack that works as hard as you do. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs the protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. We are back. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Thanks for being an everydayer. If you're not an everydayer, it's easy to become one. Just watch or listen every weekday morning, and then you are an everydayer, which is one of our favorite kind of people. You can also go beyond the podcast and become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Get text directly from us, have one-on-one conversations through text, and get access to our exclusive Discord server where we have a lot of fun talking Dodgers. We've had some really good conversations there lately, so please check that out. It's just a few bucks a month with the
a lot of good origin stories.
Yeah, definitely good. Great group of Dodger fans over there. So come join us there. And for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB, hosted by our buddy Paul Francis Sullivan, aka Sully. So Clayton Kershaw, 5 innings, one run allowed. It was earned. It was they pulled him after 74 pitches. And, that's another thing. Hindsight is like, well, if they let Kershaw go 6, maybe that changes things, the bullpen usage afterwards. But for me, Vince, and I'm saying this as the biggest Clayton Kershaw fan in the world, it felt to me like Kershaw was walking a tightrope the whole game. Even the RBI double in the first inning turned into an RBI single and Ramirez out at second because of Andy Pages' arm. Kershaw gave up, 3 doubles in the first 2 innings. I guess 2 doubles and a single that Ramirez got thrown at second, but essentially 3 doubles. They were hitting the ball relatively hard. Some of that, the umpire was definitely squeezing, and that's hard when he's not giving you the top or the bottom of the zone. It's like, dude, I throw 89. You want me to throw it right down the middle? That can be challenging. But, you and I both kind of had the same thought, Vince. Like, we don't need Clayton Kershaw to be 3-time Cy Young Award, former MVP winner Clayton Kershaw. His role on this is, hey, just try to be the best 5th or 6th starter in baseball. And, he wasn't that today, but he wasn't far off from that. And so I guess, do we think that this is what we saw today is who Kershaw is now, or is he still on his way back?
Yeah. Well, 5 innings, 1 run probably is the best number 5 or 6 starter in baseball, but the way he got there, obviously not ideal. And, I'm conflicted in trying to be, biased and homer and, thinking Kershaw, as far as we've known so far, even with the diminished velocity, he's still been able to be good, but he's been able to be good because of the slider, and the slider just hasn't been there for him in any of his starts yet. And it could be a field thing. It could be a, whatever mechanic, there's a lot of things that could go wrong with it, but yeah, he got lucky today. And if he pitches the way he did today, anytime he has a positive outing, it'll be because of luck, because the fastball, while it didn't get hit as hard as a slider, it's hard to beat people with a 90-mile-an-hour fastball, no matter how well you place it, especially him, which is not a fastball that moves too much. It's a little bit flat. And, he did get 9 swings and misses in 5 innings, which isn't terrible. 4 of them on the slider, but also his slider, the average exit velocity was 99 miles an hour. So that's what they were hitting. And that's the biggest thing with Kershaw is if we can know for sure Slider will be back, then I'll believe in him. Until then, it's just a game by game.
Yeah, and I think the stuff on the slider is pretty good. The movement, it's just a command thing, I think, and that is something in my mind that is to be expected. A guy who's coming back after a long break, I feel like the command is going to be the last thing to come back, and so that's why I'm optimistic that, because like I said, 1 run in 5 innings is a very good outcome. Definitely better than whoever in the chat said that because Kershaw's out of shape, the best they can hope for is 4 innings out of him. He literally threw 5 innings today, so I would suspect that they can hope for more than 4, especially because, in his own words, he said it was a rough outing and he felt a little bit lucky to get out of there with just 1 run allowed. If that command can come back, and not just on the slider, but especially on the slider, but we see the curveball. He hasn't landed the curveball as consistently as he has sometimes in the past. And even the fastball, we've seen that as his fastball velocity diminished over the years, he got a lot better at using it as arm side, outside to right-handed hitters. And we haven't seen that as much. He has added the splitter, which has actually gotten a little bit of
swings and misses today.
You got some swings and misses. It could be potentially a good 4th pitch for him, but that slider is what turned him from being a highly rated prospect into the best pitcher in baseball 15 years ago. It was the slider, and we don't need the slider to turn him back into the best pitcher in baseball, but he will need the slider to turn himself into the best number 5 starter in baseball.
Yeah, and mainly to get those strikeouts. He can steal a fastball by getting it by you or you fouling it off. He can get another foul ball. He can get to 2 strikes, but it's just, can he get that slider down to get the swing and miss? He got 4 swings and misses, but he also got hit hard with it. And, in any time with runners on right now, you are worried. And, he got a nice ground ball. Mookie Betts turned a good double play. Freddie made a nice pick on one of them. Yeah, Andy Page's arm. Like, he might have not even allowed the leadoff double I don't know if Rojas would have caught it cleanly if he would have been able to tag him, but it would have been close. But yeah, it's one of those things with Kershaw right now. You can't say for sure that he's not going to be good because we haven't seen him land the slider. And if the command is what never comes back for Clayton Kershaw, I'd be very, very surprised if that's what ultimately does him in. Ultimately, what will do him in is, just ineffectiveness and diminished velocity to the point where you can't, record it out other than a guy hitting a line drive to your third baseman or to the outfielder. So I'm going to hope that he figures it out. The curveball is a big one too, because he threw a really nice one to Jose Ramirez, got him to strike out. That was not necessarily the curveball he's known for. He's known for kind of the big looper that lands in for a strike. That's what he's missing too. He doesn't have another pitch to go get a strike from. He just has the fastball. And, the fastball can be well placed and he can get some swing and miss or some foul balls on it, but I don't know how long that'll happen. And against a better hitting team, I don't know if that's something that lasts.
Yeah, and the slider is generally his chase pitch. Throwing it under the hands of a right-handed hitter looks like a fastball, gets the chase. And that's where you need to be able to command that, throw it on the inside part of the plate so it does look like an inside fastball and get the swing. You mentioned that first double might not have even been a double if Rojas had caught that throw from Pages. It was kind of funny that back-to-back plays, it was almost identical. The ball hit almost the same exact place. Pages playing it perfectly both times and making almost the same exact throw. And one time they didn't get the out, the other time they did, even though the umpire didn't know it at first. It reminded me, and I know we're talking about Kershaw, but it reminded me of our conversation the other day about Pages in a corner outfield spot. And remember, we threw out the idea of they flip-flop Teo and Pages depending on the starting pitcher. Today was definitely a day with Kershaw's velocity where it is, with his breaking balls moving into right-handed hitters. Absolutely a day you could definitely expect balls to be hit to left field. And so today was a day, yes, Andy Pages is our left fielder when Clayton Kershaw's on the mound. But then, I want the opposite when it's Yamamoto on the mound. I want Pages in right and Teoscar in left. And maybe Teo heard us talking because he actually, did you see him today? He sprinted after a ball and even slid to make a nice play and hold a guy at first. Like, that was something we haven't seen from Teo on defense very often. Yeah,
obviously he wants to be better on defense, and hopefully that it's something where, I'm not going to say like, oh, it's a focus thing out there. I think it's just he's either still figuring it out or not wanting to make a mistake. So he, will soft play a ball, whatever it is. But yeah, with this team and with this offense, I feel like you can go after balls a little bit harder, maybe dive a little bit more and try to make that play. And, sometimes it might not work out and we might get mad at it in the moment, but I'm going to stand by it right now. So
yeah, I will always rather have a guy hustling hard and missing a diving catch than, playing that one the other day that should have been an out into a hit. That hurt Yamamoto's ERA. But, that's anyway, this is still a Clayton Kershaw segment. And I think you and I are in agreement, Vince, that we do expect Kershaw to improve from what we saw today. Maybe not on the results, 5 innings. Hopefully he can start being a 6-inning guy. That would definitely be a big benefit to the Dodgers. But
his arm's built up. It's just today, I think Roberts tried to go for the win and didn't work.
Yeah, Roberts could tell that, they were – Kershaw was on the verge of getting knocked around for most of the game, even when he was getting outs. They weren't necessarily soft hit outs. And so more soft contact, a few more strikeouts, I think is what we can expect from Kershaw. And, 6 innings, 2 or 3 runs would be awesome going forward. And I think that's probably what we expect. Mm-hmm. In that 8th inning, when the Guardians had their big comeback, one of the plays that we mentioned earlier was the ground ball to Max Muncy, who had just come into the game for defensive purposes. Interesting move. we're going to dig into whether that was the smartest move and what the Dodgers' approach should be on late inning defense. So please keep it locked on Dodgers. Hey, we are back. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Thanks for being an everydayer. Thanks for being a Locked On Dodgers insider. If you're not an insider, go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. It is a ton of fun, especially in that Discord server these days. So check that out. And let's talk about that play in the 8th inning, Vince. First, Tanner Scott gave up an infield single. It was, it was a legit hit. It wasn't hit hard, but it was right between Mookie and Kiké, I guess it was. And Kiké made the diving stop, knocked it down. So it was technically an infield single, but even if he fields it cleanly, he's not going to throw him out. That's a legit hit. Next one, off the bat, looked like it was going to be a double play. But then it took a funky hop, kind of ate Muncy up to the point where he actually fell down. Even after it ate him up, he might have had a chance to get, either the force of second or the out of first. They weren't going to get a double play, but he ended up on one knee and wasn't able to make a play on it at all. And the frustrating part as a fan is that Kiké Hernandez had been playing third base the whole game. They had Muncy pinch hit for Rojas, which I'm in favor of that for sure. But then they kept Muncy in the game, put him at third base, moved Kiké over to second base. And the thinking there is it's early. If this game, the game's close enough, it could go to extra innings. And so you might want to have Muncy's bat in the game later. I think at that point with a 4-2 lead, you probably want to prioritize defense, especially when you do have Ha-Seong Kim on the bench. So pinch hit with Muncy for Rojas, absolutely. But then say, okay, Muncy, you've done your job for the day. You're a one-at-bat guy today. And go sit down. And Kim is going to play second base, and we're leaving Kiké at third base for the best infield defensive alignment. I don't know if it changes anything. The ball's still going to take a bad hop if it's Kiké there. I don't know if he plays it any better, but I think we can all agree Kiké is a better defensive third baseman than Max Muncy.
Yeah, I think, pinch hitting Muncy ended up leading to a run. Like, he hit a fly ball deep enough, Kiké was able to tag up, and then he scores on the wild pitch, pass ball, whatever it was called. But yeah, at that point, I feel like you have to go with your best defensive alignment. You get Ha-Seong Kim in there, and even with Muncy playing better and Ha-Seong Kim, essentially still being unproven. He's been proven in the at-bats that he's had so far. I don't think there's a big difference of them offensively. Obviously, maybe the power might be the big difference, but for the chance of one more at-bat when you already have a lead versus having your best infield defense in there, especially with a guy like Muncy who's been struggling recently and could be in his head a little bit about it and everything else. I don't know if Roberts was asked about it and see anything, could have been like, oh, I want to, show confidence in Max, but like right now, that's not the time to show confidence in people when you have a bullpen that's struggling, and you want to maximize the defense you have around them, and you want to give them the best chance of winning the game. When you have a lead past the 7th inning, you got to go for the win at that point. And I think that in the moment, I didn't really obviously think about it, but then after the fact, after it happened, you're like, wait, why is Muncy still out there? He could have easily gone back in, and they could have easily kept Kiké there, and they could have easily put Kim at second.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, the decision to hit for Rojas, I'm totally in favor of. I mean, that directly led to the Dodgers' 4th run. Muncy hit a fly ball that was deep enough to move Kiké to third base. Chances are Kiké doesn't score if Rojas bats there. But, yeah, there's no reason to leave him in on defense right there when he's struggling. And I don't know if it is. We've talked a lot about the 2019 NLDS where I feel like Dave Roberts put Kershaw in the game as to Clayton Kershaw redemption tour basically, and it backfired. I don't know if this was I'm showing Max that I trust him on defense thing or not, but whatever it is, I mean, it's standard for the Dodgers and all teams. We've seen him how many times take Conforto out of the game late in games and put Chris Taylor or Kiké Hernandez in left field to replace him. Max Muncy is a guy you take out of the game late in the game. You don't put him in. And maybe this is also a bigger conversation of Miguel Rojas should be a late inning defensive replacement and not a starter. Maybe it should have been Kim starting at second base all along, even with the lefty on the mound. I get why it was Rojas, but the fact is, I don't know. Miguel Rojas is a bad hitter. that's my issue with Miguel Rojas being in the lineup. If there's a guy who you know you're going to have to pinch hit for in the late innings, and it's not a guy who you're worried about development or anything. It's an old man who isn't going to be on the team next year. Just don't start him. Let him be a late inning defensive replacement and pinch hitting, if the absolute right situation comes up, which is basically that you need somebody to lay down a bunt or whatever. But in the end, although we've seen what happens sometimes when Rojas tries to lay down a bunt, maybe not the best example. But, I think maybe a lot of my frustration with this is now that they've shown what they're willing to do with Barnes and Taylor, it's like Miguel Rojas, I know he's a clubhouse leader. I know he's gotten some hits, but the dude's got a 584 OPS. Yes, he's had success as a pinch hitter. I don't believe that means that he is a good pinch hitter. I believe it means he's had some success pinch hitting this year. I'm not confident that he will the next time he comes up because I think what we've seen throughout his career is he's a mediocre hitter who's had a couple solid seasons and unlikely to have one this year. And, if there was anybody banging on the door in the minors, I think Rojas would already be gone.
Yeah, we both are, advocates of either one, it's early in the season, putting things in perspective and things like that. A loss on May 28th is not going to cost you too much at the end of the day. Although, the Dodgers did miss the division by a game in 2021, so you never know. But for me, when you're going to have a 4 to 6 week stretch with compromised pitching, I feel like you do have to chase wins. And I feel like Roberts has done that. He's gone after wins. And actually, a couple of times, he's done it where maybe he didn't need to use Tanner Scott or he didn't need to use somebody, but he did because, that was the right play or the right move at the time to finish that game off. Then, yeah, that's what you go after. And I think you have to treat it that way on defense in the later innings. I think, if you don't really need pinch hitters that often. And if you do, the guys that should be coming off the bench are better defensively. Realistically, if you're going to pinch hit, it's for Michael Conforto late in the game against a lefty, maybe. And whoever comes in is probably a better left fielder than him, or there's someone else behind him that's a better left fielder than him. And I think that's what they got to do here. If you're going to chase wins with the pitching staff, then chase those wins with the defensive behind.
Yeah, especially because it came right after they did bring in Tanner Scott with 2 outs in the 7th inning. Clearly they're trying to win this game. They're going all out. And knowing that you still have Dalton Rushing and Hae-Sung Kim on the bench available, it's like it's not the days of Chris Taylor and Austin Barnes on the bench where you only have one legitimate pinch hitting possibility. So even if the game had gone to extra innings and they had already taken Max Muncy out, okay, don't worry. If they bring in a left or a tough righty to face Kiké next time, you can hit for him with Dalton Rushing or whoever. There's other options. It's just I think this was, I don't like to say a wrong decision by a manager. I don't like to say a right decision. I don't believe there are many right or wrong decisions, but I do think, in what I call 60-40 decisions, I think this was on the 40 side, meaning it had a lower probability of success than what the alternative would have. And all I ask for from a manager is to, as often as possible, take the route that has the higher possibility of success. And that doesn't mean it'll work out. Often you make the quote unquote right decision and it doesn't work. And sometimes you make the quote unquote wrong decision and it does work. If that ball doesn't take a bad hop, Muncy probably does turn a double play on that ball. And we're not even thinking about the fact, why is Muncy in the game? Yeah. Why don't they have their best defense in the game right now? But they didn't have a third baseman who's fully equipped to handle bad hops. And so, it's I
haven't seen the angle, but if he did have a chance, I wonder if I don't want to throw this away, so let me eat it, because that's already in his head.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember who was it that hit that ball. Whoever was batting batting 7th, but I don't remember who that was. Oh, I do have the box score right here in front of me. That was Wilson, and he's pretty fast. So probably once Muncy,
I don't think he had a chance, but just the way he kind of hesitated, I'm like, maybe.
Yeah, once he went down, I'm guessing he didn't have a chance. It was probably a good idea to put it in his pocket at that point, but he should have put it in his glove and stayed on his feet before that and, see what happens. But, again, the reason that I don't call for Dave Roberts' head is because I don't think he makes the less positive decision very often. I think Dave Roberts is a good manager. I think today, there's definitely plenty of justification to second guess that particular move.
Yeah. And again, moving forward, maybe that's something he thinks about. And maybe, this is something that is a catalyst for what we're talking about.
Yep. Yeah, so the Dodgers are done with this road trip. They have a day off on Thursday, and then they come home for a tough homestand. They got the Yankees and Mets coming up, and it's going to be 6 tough games. Good news is everybody else in the National League West lost today too, and so the Dodgers maintain their 2-game lead over the Padres, 3-game lead over the Giants, and whatever else it is, 7 over the D-backs and 25 over the Rockies. So Rockies not quite beaten down the door yet. And so, you know what? Day off, probably a welcome day off for these Dodgers, and hopefully the bats can get back to what they did in the first couple games against Cleveland. I think they're facing Max Fried on Friday, which doesn't bode super well for the bats waking up a lot, but the Dodgers have actually had some success against Fried in the past, and so we'll see what happens. But you got anything else for today, Vince?
None else.
All right, that'll do it for us for today. We'll have one more episode tomorrow, some form of a mailbag episode, plus some other thoughts we've been having. So if you have any specific topics or questions or whatever, feel free to shoot those over to us. Thank you for being an everydayer. If you are, if you're not, you can become one by watching and listening every weekday morning. You can definitely make that easier on yourself by subscribing wherever you're watching or listening right now. Be sure to check out Locked On MLB Game Night. It's on the Locked On MLB YouTube channel, wherever you get podcasts. It covers every game in Major League Baseball with thoughts from the Locked On hosts for those teams involved in those games. So be sure to check that out. You can go beyond the podcast and become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at VinceSense91. I'm on Twitter at Snydog, and both of our DMs are open over there. You can also email us, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or send us a voicemail or a text message to 323-863-LOCK5625. We are here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Have a good one.